2013 Seattle Antiquarian Book Fair. The date is October 13th, Sunday afternoon. And I'm here with my longtime dear friend Ed Smith, bookseller who lives on Bainbridge Island here in the greater Seattle area, who's lived a number of other places during his career, and has a very interesting background and a very interesting book business. So Ed, thank you very much for being willing to sit down for this.
Thank you, Taylor. He did move us ahead a year. He said this was 2013.
Oh, you know what?
And I believe it's 12, but that's fine.
I'm reading off this script, and I'm a bad editor of my own writing. So.
But we always like to start off with a joke, so that's
well,
good.
that was my unintentional one. Thank you, Ed. It is still 2012 for a few more months. So.
And I also want to put a plug in for my friend Paul Ryle, who's a videographer here.
Very good. Appreciate
who made
it.
the ABAA film in 2003 of that San Francisco fair called Bibliomania, available from the ABAA.
It's a terrific film, and I'd also add that Paul has been helping me here in Seattle with video interviews for, I think this is the 5th year, and just does a terrific job, and this project would not be anything without him, so thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Okay, Ed, now we're back to you. Tell us a little bit, where were you born and raised?
I was born in St. Louis and then moved to Arizona when I was in the 6th grade, and went to school there.
Whereabouts in Arizona?
Phoenix.
Phoenix, big city.
Yeah, big change from St. Louis, but we like the West a lot, so it worked out well for me, that part of it.
Yeah. Do you have memories of St. Louis much?
Very much. Fishing at Central Park. I got to ride up the arch when I was traveling through.
Nice.
I won't miss the humidity. We went to a Catholic school that was a half a block away. And I bet the only thing I can remember is the nuns were so tough that when a tornado took the roof off the monastery, we felt pretty good about it. But nobody got hurt.
Well, that's quite a memory. So off to Phoenix when you were, what, about 12?
Right.
And tell us about that time.
Well, we were raised, 5 of us, by our aunt, and she had tons of books, but I never made the connection yet for books. It was still way in the future for me. I remember the most treasured thing about growing up was a album, multiple disc album of Johnny Appleseed, and I can almost quote it verbatim today.
Played it a lot.
Played it a lot.
Yeah, that's nice. You were one of 5 siblings. Where did you?
I was right in the middle.
Right in the middle.
center. Right.
2 older and 2 younger.
2 older, 2 younger.
Well, must have been an experience. And you stayed in Phoenix how long?
Stayed in Phoenix till about 67. Finished high school there.
And then what happened?
I went to apprenticeship school for masonry, a bricklayer, and then I got indentured to a contractor who did a bunch of jobs all over the country, and that started me traveling, and we went all over the country doing this and that and the other, and I got an education on the road, so to speak. Learned a good trade that I was in for 27 years. And about 85 I started collecting books.
Where were
early
you
80s.
living at the time?
In California.
Whereabouts?
Around Hemet area. And I started collecting books, buying and selling a little bit, you know, like everybody does. And I just seemed to have a knack for it.
What gave you the idea to start? And was there some particular incident that happened, or just?
Well, I liked the poet Charles Bukowski a lot. I used to read those LA Free Presses, and I started collecting his books. And I wound up publishing his newsletter years later. But it's a good business because I realized that somebody who's kind of a workaholic, no matter how good you are, or fast you are, or how much money you have, you're never going to get it all. So it was a good trade for somebody who had a lot of energy.
A lot of energy, but knew you'd never learn everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you probably move on.
Yeah, but that's why so few people move out of the book trade, because they never do learn everything.
That's true.
Yeah. Or if they think they have, they haven't. So that was 85, and you're starting to do, I guess, it sounds like a little book scouting in addition to your collecting.
Right.
And how did things develop from there?
Well, I wanted to move from where I lived. I actually lived in a nudist camp at this time.
Well, I'd like to hear about that. This is the first I've ever heard of it.
Yeah. For about 4 years. I was trying to write screenplays, and that was a cheap place to live. You could buy your own
Trying
place
to do
there.
a remake of The Naked and the Dead?
Right, right. And my work was deemed dead, so we moved on. We moved into books, but we started collecting, and then we started learning a little bit about it, and I met a few people through my collecting, and you know, well, to make a long story short, in the early 90s, when I was ready to move, I moved up to Ojai, California, and opened a bookstore with the person I bought a lot of books from.
And who was that?
I'd rather not say,
Okay.
because it was a bad experience in one way, but it was a good experience in another way. So it got me off of one path and on a better path, it turned out. It seemed that way. So then we were off and running.
How long did that little shop last?
6 months.
Oh,
But it went on after.
it did.
We
but-
didn't. I was going to buy him out, and he decided to buy me out, which was the best thing that happened because I was free, so to speak,
Right, right.
to follow where I really wanted to go.
Well, after that 6 months with the shop, did you have any of your own inventory to sell, or was it?
I did.
Okay.
We had used a lot of my books to fund the store, but I got a lot of credit from the store.
I see.
And fortunately for me, I picked a lot of good books, and that kind of started me off.
I see. So this is early 90s and you're working out of your home for?
Right. I moved up there, and I actually met my wife, my first and only wife, when I opened that bookstore in Ojai. And then we got hooked up together. She loved books. That's why she stopped in the store and got talking books. But anyway, she was well known in her business, and we did a lot of traveling and moving due to her business.
Right.
And we finally got to Seattle, where I always wanted to come to, because anybody who spends time in Phoenix wants the rain.
Yeah.
And that's what happened to me. And
Yeah.
I couldn't wait to get up here, and I never thought I would, but here I am.
What are some of the other places that you lived during the last 20 years?
Madison, Wisconsin. Bill Gates actually hired my wife for his company Corbis as an executive editor, and that's where we met our friend Paul, the videographer, as well. Gates bought his company as well. But anyway, we finally got to Seattle, but we lived in Madison, Wisconsin, Jacksonville, Florida.
I remember that.
Let's see, where else? I can't think of any other place. But we did a lot of traveling overseas as well, and did a lot of book hunting in between. And we've been in the Seattle area since about '97, so we love it up here.
Tell us just a little bit about your wife Ellen's background in the field of photography, and has that had any influence on your book selling?
It's had a great influence on it, because she owned the largest stock photo agency in Los Angeles, After Image, and she's done a lot of expert witness work. But she knows books. She's been around books all of her life. She loves books. She's got a lot of books, and it turned me on to the photography book business,
Right.
which we learned a lot about. And when we moved up to Ojai, we also met another great ABAA seller, and after watching all the videos, I think his still remains the best, Jim Pepper.
Jim Pepper.
And he kind of took me under his wing and showed me the ropes, and he was a very great individual
Absolutely.
who knew the business and did things the right way.
Tell us a little bit about your inventory as it's evolved over the years. I mean, if somebody opens up an Ed Smith catalog or looks at Ed Smith's webpage, what kind of books are we going to see?
Well, when I first started looking for first editions from thrift stores, they wouldn't have been much. But now we like to have a little bit of everything, but mainly modern lit, photography, and through my contacts I met in the business. We do a lot of business in screenplays with a couple of other fellows,
Right.
which we're very proud to be able to do. The more people you know in this business, it just makes everything good.
Isn't that
You know,
the truth?
it's full of
Yeah.
it's full of great people. I mean, you can't say enough about them.
Yeah.
We're lucky to have the ABA fair up here. It really isn't, but half of the dealers almost
Half
are
the dealers
ABA.
are, yeah. Well, I've had two people tell me today that this is the best non-ABA fair they know of,
Yeah,
and they do a lot of fairs.
yeah.
So,
So
but it's interesting you mentioned screenplays, which I've always thought was part of the business that seems to have more potential than a lot of people realize. Could you just tell us maybe about some of the really great screenplays you've found?
Well, when you talk to people about how they got in the book business, and when you especially get to the subject of what the internet did to them, did it help them or did it hurt them? A lot of people, maybe if they were well known in the business, it may have hurt them, who knows. But the up-and-comers, it really helped, because if you find you have a knack for something, that's where Ellen really helped out my wife, because I hated the internet and I didn't want anything to do with it. But she showed me how to put a book on this little news group I was on for sale, and it was a long time ago. It was Cormac McCarthy's second book, and in like 6 seconds I sold a $1,500 book. We don't want to say 2 weeks later we were a computer genius, but it was close to that.
Yeah. Well,
And ever since then I've kind of had a knack to find things on the internet, through the internet.
yeah, when you see some results like that, that's a good motivation to learn.
5 or 6 early John Wayne screenplays. So many good ones. If you like film, you know, if you have some actors that buy from you or people in the business, you know, you have to realize that most of their work comes from the written word.
Yeah.
So again, it's all about books and the effect they have on you, and how they're translated to the screen.
To the screen, yeah.
So it's kind of a nice sideline that's, again, so huge you can't,
Yeah.
you're never going to get it all.
No.
But it's good. It's all good.
Do you do much with other kind of printed material related to movies, or just the screenplays?
Just the screenplays themselves, because it's all I can do to keep up with that. Looking for them. And
You also, you mentioned Charles Bukowski as a writer that you buy. You also seem to have a particular interest in Hunter S. Thompson.
yes, we appraised Mr. Thompson's archive in '97. Spent 5 days in his basement, and we came away with a big spider bite, I remember, a fear of guns, and loud noises in the middle of the night. But also, Hunter also appreciated books. You know, he loved Kipling. When he was broke, he spent his last $1,000 on a Kipling Sign Limited because he just had to have it. So a lot of people don't know that about him. But
How much personal interaction did you have with him during this time?
well, we visited him 5 times in Colorado at his house, and we did a Sign Limited book together of his book of letters. And he wanted me to publish his lost chapter to Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas that took place in a supermarket parking lot. But Hunter didn't make it. That's what we were going to do next after the Sign Limited. But he was a good fella. He loved books, and you know, he just was one of a kind.
I didn't realize that he was a lover of books.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he had just about everything you could think of in his own personal library, and I tried to set him up to where he would, Pepper helped me a lot too, set him up to where he is, you know, to sign all of his reading books, all of his books. You know, every time a book came out, we would buy him 400 copies. He had a great discount, and you know, he stockpiled all that stuff, but he just never got around to signing them.
Really? That's too bad. Well, we'll never see his like again.
Probably not.
One of a kind, definitely.
Probably not.
Ed, you already spoke a little bit about the internet and the initial kind of fear of it, and you touched on something that I always find interesting to talk about, is people who think the internet hurt their business and those who think it helped. And obviously you are in the latter group. Could you just talk a little bit more about that and how these days you use the internet to benefit your business?
Well, I would say in the old days you would wait for a print catalog from somebody,
Right.
and maybe hunt books in your general area, but you know, those were your limitations, unless you lived in a major city where they had 25 or 50 bookstores.
Right.
Berkeley alone used to have over 50, I believe. Those days are gone. And at the time I came up, the internet was just coming along. I remember at the Earthling in Santa Barbara, an independent bookstore, they gave classes on the Macintosh. That's where Ellen and I went to learn about the computer. And ever since I sold that first book, I mean, it just seemed to open everything up.
Yeah.
You could tell, and you had the proof that it was a game changer.
Yeah.
And we tried to use it effectively, and it's worked out for us.
You never saw it as a threat to the old ways?
Never.
Because I take it you just really didn't care about the old ways.
Well, I think
You cared about the right ways.
what people might not realize is it includes more than it excludes.
Yes.
And maybe in the old days, it excluded more than
That's
it included.
Very
But for me, it's worked out, and there's nothing better than spending a lot of time in front of your computer, because you meet so many people, you can go so many places. We watch Bibliomania all the time. You know, we try and reach out to all of our friends' email.
good. Yeah.
When I send an email to somebody, they think, or a reply to somebody, they think they got it bounced back because I'm on it. So
Yeah.
it's the future, of course, and there's going to be something better. We just don't know what it is yet.
That's right.
And if Al Gore is the one that invented the internet, we appreciate it, Al.
Well, even if he didn't, we still appreciate it. That's what I'd say. So these days, your inventory, you're still working out of your home.
Still working out of our home up here on Bainbridge.
But we
Yes.
should say you don't exclusively work on the internet, that you do exhibit at book fairs.
Right. We like to. Sometimes we do the California fairs, but it's really got down to Seattle because we don't like to travel that much anymore.
Yeah.
And you know, when you have the internet, you're traveling all the time,
Mhm.
and you can eat at home and sleep in your own bed.
Yeah.
We like to go other places, but you know, we like the Seattle Fair the best, I think.
Where would you say there's any particular type of person you call like your customer base?
Well, probably. It's hard to say.
Yeah.
We have a range of a spectrum of
Yeah.
customers. You know, we couldn't just rely on one.
No, or one type either. That's,
Right.
That's
You never know who collects what.
yeah, or why. And
I did a fair in Florida once, and I remember Mike Slicker, Lighthouse Books, an ABAA member, had miniature books, and he had a little cabinet. It was also a miniature, and I've never seen people have so much fun with those little miniature books. But I just haven't got around to getting around to that. But every aspect of everything. Another guy here tried to sell me 300 pop-up books. So there's so much that I don't know about the business. That's what's so great about it.
I'm just hoping they never invent pop-up miniature books. I think I would like quit the business if that happened. Well, as this old saying goes, if there is something, whatever it is, somebody collects it.
Absolutely. And when you get in the presence of people like Taylor, you know, he's got great footwear. He's really known for that. But I can tell you, there's not a book he probably hasn't seen once or twice in his life. And I'm sure when you see Taylor, you say, "Hey Taylor, have you ever seen this? Or what about this?" That's what's so great about the trade. There's a lot of people that can help you out when you don't know what something is.
Now that brings up something interesting that I've talked to a few people about, the rise in interest in ephemera. Now, in a way, although they're not ephemeral, the movie scripts that you buy and sell could almost be considered ephemera, because it isn't a question of going out and finding the best copy or the cheapest copy or something. Often what you have is the only copy, and that's true of old photos and letters.
The first time I did a major book fair, across from me was that. I wish I had a directory here. Oh yes, I think they're from New York State. A Gathering.
Yeah.
And they brought in plastic tubs all this ephemera,
Yeah.
and I couldn't believe the interest they had.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, I was ready to go for the big fair. I had all my best books,
Mhm.
and 2 or 3 people would stop by and look, but they had like 15 or 20 every hour
Yeah.
over there pouring through that stuff.
So
And
many
it's just
things.
so interesting.
Yeah. And again, what they had in their booth, other people at the fair weren't going to have. Whereas
Oh, they were the only ones that had anything like that.
there might be 5 people with the first edition of Grapes of Wrath.
You know, you can see how skilled some dealers are because that's what they bring. They bring their best or what they know the best. And they don't take a chance on anything else because they might not be able to sell it. So it's an interesting take on everything when you come to a fair, because you can learn about the seller by what they have, so to speak.
That's an interesting observation too. Now I throw it back to you. And in terms of your own view of yourself as a bookseller, do you consider yourself a risk taker at all when it comes to, maybe going in a direction you're not sure of, but you just have kind of a good feeling about it?
Well, I guess if you walk across the street at a light in Seattle, you'll wait for that. Everybody in Seattle waits for it.
Yeah.
You have to, if you're a bookseller, to survive, I think you have to either be rich or take risks.
Yeah.
Kind of like the jaywalkers in New York that crowd the cars, run them off the road almost.
Yeah.
You have to do that in your own way, and you hope to make it easy and painless for people. But you have to do that, because if there's something good out there, if you don't get it, someone else will.
Is there, in all the books that you've seen bought and sold, was there ever some really odd circumstance where someplace that you had no expectation that you found something great?
It's just about every place I go. I mean, I used to think this was the best or that was the best, but I quit keeping track of it or trying to remember it because it happens too many times. Somehow you just have to, on the internet of all places, put yourself in a position to find something. And then usually you will if you have an open mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or you're not really looking for something. They say that's the secret in Las Vegas too. If you think you're going to go there and you know you're going to win, it's not going to happen. So you have to go there to have fun. You go there obviously to try and make something, but
or at least not lose too much.
Let it happen.
Yeah. How big is your inventory now? How many items?
About 3,000 books, and only about half that are on the internet. It's just one-man operation.
Yeah.
There's only so much you can do.
Yeah, well, so many people will tell me that I try to keep up, but things sell, and then I try to get them on. They never can get them all.
And then some databases like Amazon will tell you, well, you'd sell a lot more if you did this, this, and this. I said, well, then I wouldn't be able to sleep at night because I'd be doing this, this, and this.
You'd be awake 25 hours a day, something like that.
Right.
We talked a little bit about book fairs as part of your business and the internet. Now, I gather you no longer do printed catalogs?
We do.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Do about 3 or 4 a year. You have to stay viable. I remember a friend of mine in California had a store for 14 years, and he didn't think he needed a catalog, which he didn't. And then he put a catalog out that would look like a phone book and only sold 3 or 4 books. You have to stay viable and put catalogs out, regardless of how well they do, because you have to keep viable. There's new things that are happening. You just have to stay out there.
My impression is that there are still people who collect, who buy books, who prefer to have the catalog in hand.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We love those catalogs.
Sure. Now, do you do the kind of e-catalogs as well as?
No,
No, you
I
don't.
haven't gotten to that yet.
Interesting.
I get them all the time, but
Right.
they're instantaneous.
Yeah,
There's something about the paper still,
absolutely.
and I don't think that's old-fashioned. I don't think that's ever going to change. They're not selling e-books yet at rare book fairs.
No, well, I mean, people are buying objects that are made out of paper and ink, and they may want to order them out of something made out of paper and ink. Well, one thing we really didn't get into, although you mentioned a couple, but people in the trade who had an influence on you.
James Pepper, number one. Taylor Bowie here. So many people out there. I mean, Eugene, my guy right next to me at the fair, Dave Meeker.
Mm-hmm.
Dave's his own man, and he's got a passion for it.
Yes,
I'm kind of drawn to those people who have a real passion. There's a lot of ways to do it, but that's the most attractive to me.
Yeah, I've of course interviewed both Dave and Eugene. They're always welcome here at the Seattle Book Fair. We're always glad to see them. What are your plans? How do you see your business developing? Do you see yourself as you've reached a comfortable plateau and you want to just continue, or do you see something changing on the horizon?
No, I think to stay steady is the key, I think. And what you do is, I guess you could make a saying up similar to other sayings, that you're only as good as your last really good book you had. And most of the time you sell your best stuff first, so you have to keep trying to get a little better each time,
Yeah.
and use the knowledge that you've learned to get a little better if possible.
How often do you go out on scouting trips?
Not too often, but in my chair in front of the computer,
Right.
I'm out there maybe 12 hours a day minimum.
Yeah.
And it's really not like work either.
No, it is a lot of fun to do that. But, of course, people often say that not everything gets listed on the internet.
Maybe a third of mine doesn't, because something happens to it between now and then.
So
It's usually good.
You don't think it's really a viable thing in your case anymore to make trips to go around looking at the...
It is, if there was enough bookstores to justify it.
Yeah.
Somebody I know once said, if there's a computer in a bookstore, I won't even go in there. Well, I don't feel that
Oh,
way.
that's
It's insane, but
that is
we still love going in bookstores. There's just not enough of them around anymore.
No, I've certainly, just in the time I've been in the trade in Seattle, there's only a few open shops left, but that's true everywhere too, even San Francisco, New York, it's all over the place. But, it still can pay off to visit.
I'll never
booksellers.
forget moving so many times. I always would try and thin my books out and hopefully get a better stock. And one of the great trades I made right before we moved to Madison, Wisconsin, was Taylor at his door. It was so easy and nice for both of us, you can't believe it.
Well, it was so easy,
That's the
I
way it
don't
should be.
remember it. I mean, it must have been good, because I'm not suffering from it or anything. Well, you've been in the trade now on your own for, let me add it back up, 21 years, is that right?
Since 94, I think.
Oh, 94, okay.
95.
95, 17 years.
Yeah.
On your own.
Right.
And we're going on kind of the same, keep on doing what you're doing. So do you have any plans to retire from this business?
I don't think anybody does, because if you lose interest and something happens to you health-wise, I guess you lose interest in things. That's one thing. You know, that's what happened to Hemingway. He got in those plane crashes, and then he lost. They treated him with shock treatments, for Christ's sake, and then he knew he couldn't write anymore, and that's all he wanted to do. So, you know, everybody knows what happened. But booksellers usually just keep selling books.
They do. I know very few that actually just walk away from it. I mean, we both can remember like seeing elderly booksellers that can hardly even move, but they still visit book fairs, you know, walk around on canes.
And the beauty is, booksellers have a major ingrained backup plan that most people don't talk about: collecting.
Yeah. That's
So
right.
if they can't sell books anymore, they can collect their own books, so to
Right.
speak.
Or if they run out of inventory, then they can turn their collection into their inventory. I've seen them do that too.
Right.
I'm just going to go off track because I just want to add that some of the most enjoyable meals that I eat in restaurants are with Ed. So I just want to talk a little bit about that. Let's just imagine that you and I are going out to breakfast tomorrow morning.
Right.
We're going to sit down. Now, what are you going to want to have for breakfast? What's your favorite?
Oh, probably corned beef hash and eggs.
But now I knew what you were going to say that, but let's elaborate on that. You
Okay.
ask the server, is the corned beef hash homemade? And then what happens?
Yeah, if it's homemade. My wife, this happened to me the first time when my wife took me to that famous deli in Los Angeles. So I love corned beef hash, so I just ordered it. When I
Canners?
got it, yes.
Canners.
And when I got it, it was the homemade kind, and I said, "I'm sorry, I can't eat that. I can only have the can with the little potatoes." I'm a box and can man, and that's great for a bookseller. Taylor, on the other hand, if they don't have turnips or stuff like that, he can't eat there. So,
And I'm sorry I missed your recent open house where you did serve turnips. I greatly regret that.
yeah, well, we'll have another one.
Okay, with or without turnips, I'll be
And the booksellers are so great up here. Everything I laid out for them to see, everything was still there when everybody left, so it's great.
That's good.
Northwest.
Didn't have to frisk anybody.
Right.
Great. Ed, thank you very much. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you so much.
Not the first time we've
Oh,
sat
thank
back
you
and
so
talked,
much.
but
Thank you.
this is extra special. Thank
Very
you.
good. Thank you. It was
Okay.
good for me. Thank you so much. Okay.